Hey, everybody. Welcome to Motion Monday. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you're at. My name is Chris Georgenes. I'm an animator. Been an animator for quite a while, but I am now using or still using Animate, which is also known as Flash at one time, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, I think. Um, and it's funny because I was at by the way, I'm looking at the chat. Hello, Cody Bear, Michelle, Uma, Robert, Keys, all you guys. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining me. This is going to be kind of a quick 25 minutes or so. I'm going to try to throw a lot at you, but this is Animate. I mentioned it used to be Flash because there's been a lot of confusion, even to this day, where I was at a Create Live event here in the Boston area where I live, and a couple weeks ago. And I had this conversation for a good 10, 15 minutes with someone talking about Animate. And then I realized that he was referring to Character Animator. And I know that one time there was an Adobe Edge Animate. So there's a lot of applications with the word animate in it. But this is Adobe Animate, formerly known as Flash, and it's still a great program for animation. What I'm going to show you are more of the advanced techniques of using Animate. And since we have so little time, I'm just going to jump into it. What I'm going to focus on is called nesting. It's kind of an unofficial term, and think of it as like Russian dolls, right? We have a timeline. I'm going to create actually a new document here. I just clicked new document, character animation. I'm going to just choose. I can actually, click any of and all of these categories. But character animation is what I use the most. A lot of my work gets exported to video and then brought into Premiere and edited together. My ultimate platform could be YouTube or social media, but it's usually at this point an MP4 format. So 1920 by 1080, default width is 1920 by 1080 with a frame rate of 30. So I'm just going to click create. I got a nice brand new fresh screen. And you'll notice there's a timeline down here along the bottom. There's no animation. There's nothing going on. I don't have any frames except one blank frame. But what I want to show you is how to create levels of animation within animations and how powerful that can be. So let's just jump right in. So what I want to do is I go to my bouncing ball technique of showing a ball bouncing across the stage in a very simple, fast way. But I've done that before. In fact, I think the last stream I did was from before. Question from YouTube: what are the practical uses for this application, and how would I use this with After Effects or Premiere from a marketing standpoint? That's a great question. It's a vector-based drawing tool, as I'll show you as I'm working. I'm going to grab the rectangle tool. You can import from Illustrator. You can import Photoshop files and bitmaps. You can import sound. You can create almost anything. This is truly a blank canvas. So let's say I wanted to create, I don't know, some cool effect. Maybe say like poles coming up out of the ground, going back into the ground, but do it in a more advanced kind of way. But really what I want to show you is the power of nesting animation. So this is, again, a vector tool. I can grab these vector shapes, do what I want with them. I actually drew this with object drawing mode, which is up here. If I turn that off, I have just vector shape here. This, with object drawing mode, you'll see this bounding box. It kind of helps protect that shape from other shapes editing it, right? Or kind of destroying it in a sense. So in other words, let me grab, say, the oval tool and a different color. And if I draw an oval and I bring it over here and overlay it onto my rectangle, I can kind of edit the shape by doing so, which might be cool if that's what you want. But I don't want that for this example. I'm going to turn on object drawing. And if I create now this circle, you'll see it's contained within an object, and it won't edit or disrupt the shape, okay? So that's what I'm doing. So now I have this shape here. This is going to be my starting point. Again, I'm on the main timeline. You'll see down here, I now have one frame. I'm going to insert a whole bunch of frames eventually, but for now, I'm going to actually go to my library panel. I'm going to open this up. A library is specific to each document you create. It actually houses and contains all of your symbols, imported assets such as bitmaps or sounds, that type of thing. And you can reuse a lot of objects. So what we're going to do is create some art. I'm going to zoom in on this. What I want to do now is grab the oval tool again, but I want to pick a lighter gray color. And by the way, I'm going to do a lot of things quickly. I'm going to use a lot of keyboard shortcuts. I'm using a SenseLabs pen display, and I even have this friendly little quick keys component that has shortcuts built into it. So if I'm doing something pretty quickly and I didn't talk my way through it and it gets confusing, just let me know. But I'm going to try to at least mention what I'm doing with my left hand using quick keys component with the SenseLabs tablet. All right, so oval tool, a light color over here. I'm going to just draw an oval, something like this, about the same width. And let's zoom in a little bit more. Free transform tool up here. I hit Q on the keyboard, and I'm going to just make it look like the top of a pole, hopefully. Maybe shorten it a little bit, add some perspective. I also want to round off the bottom. Selection tool. And I'm going to keep an eye on the chat as well. Oh, you're talking about frame rates? Yeah, 29.97 is NTSC frame rate that's used, as opposed to PAL or PAL, which is Europe, which is 24, I believe. Am I right about that? Am I remembering that correctly? Okay, so I've rounded that off. Okay, now what we're going to do is convert this to a symbol. And I'm going to get into that, not too much into the weeds about symbols because there's different kinds of symbols. I selected the entire piece of vector art that I just created. I'm going to go to Modify, Convert to Symbol. I sometimes hit F8 on the keyboard. Your function keys those get worn out the quickest when I'm using Animate. F5 is Insert Frames, F6 is Insert Keyframes, F7 is Blank Keyframes, and F8 is Converting Symbols. I'm going to call this Pole. Now watch over here on the right at the library panel. As soon as I click OK, but oh, by the way, I mentioned previously about different types of symbols. You have movie clips, buttons, and graphic symbols, which is what we're going to use. And I'll explain why in a minute. Movie clips are also symbols that are intended to be used with ActionScript and interactivity. You can name them, you can target them with ActionScript, tell them what to do, move around, game engine type stuff. Buttons, again, interactivity, but I'm not going to get into that. That's a whole other Motion Monday. All right, graphic symbol. And then look over here, we now have a pole in our library. I can click and drag multiple instances of the pole. I can free transform, skew, and scale them and make multiple poles if I want. They're all referencing this one library item, which is the pole symbol. This is why Flash was so big and popular online as the most ubiquitous browser plugin in history, because you could create and reuse assets that are vector-based. They're already very small in file size. And if you're reusing the same object 1,000 times, it only has to load it once. Back in the day when 28.8K modems were all the rage, it just produced, you could actually produce minute or 2 minute long animations that were less than a megabyte. All right, so one thing I want to show you though, if I double click on one of these symbols or instances of the symbol, I'm brought now into the symbol itself. Everything else gets grayed out because it's on the previous or parent timeline. You have to think in layers because Animate doesn't have just one timeline. It has multiple timelines. If you come from After Effects, that's called pre-comps, pre-composing. And Premiere has, I think, nesting. So you can actually have multiple timelines going on at the same time, which allows you to create kind of sophisticated layerings of animations to do different things. And we're going to get to that. But for this example, I just want to show you that if I click and maybe edit this, you'll see all of them get edited because, again, I'm referencing the artwork inside this symbol. I'm going to undo that because I don't want that. I'm going to select these three and get rid of them. So now double click the symbol that we created on the main stage. Even though it looks the same, this timeline is different. What I want to do is animate this pole. We're going to do it inside this symbol. You can see up here, it's kind of like a tabbed breadcrumb trail, where scene one is back here. If I click it, I'm back out on scene one. Inside of scene one, I have pole. That's this symbol in here. Here's its own timeline. Let's animate it. Okay. I'm going to say, let's make this a little bigger. Again, we can hit play, but nothing happens because we only have one frame, and that's it. So I'm going to go to, let's say, frame 1. I think it's going to last about a second, and I'm not too concerned with the timing of this animation because we can always change it later. But I'm going to hit F6. There's another way to create keyframes here using this shortcut key that's in the timeline panel. I want to create yet another keyframe halfway through on frame 15. I'm going to click that. So now I can play this, but nothing's happening because we've created keyframes, we've inserted frames, we've extended sort of the exposure of this timeline, but we've done nothing in terms of animation or making any kind of changes. What I want to do is have the pole start, let's say, in the ground. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to move it down to about here. And what I want to do is have the pole rise up, but then return back down into the same position as keyframe 1. So actually what I'm going to do is replace this keyframe. I'm going to hold down the Option key, click and drag the first keyframe. It's going to duplicate it. So now I've kind of created an animation here. But actually, one thing I forgot to do, I want to motion tween this or classic tween this. There's two different kinds of tweens. And so what we want to do is we can only apply classic tweens to what is a symbol. Now, I know we're inside a symbol. This is where it can kind of get a little confusing. We want to create an animation inside a symbol. So we need to convert even this artwork, even though we're inside a symbol, into its own symbol as well. So I'm going to hit F8. I'm going to call this pull. And maybe, oops, I just fat fingered my keyboard. Pull nested. Let's call it that. Okay. I should have done this first because we want pull nested, the instance of this symbol in all these keyframes. So I'm going to repeat holding down Option, duplicating that keyframe. Let's actually clear this keyframe, hit F6, and let's bring this back up to the top. Okay. All right, so now we have a symbol inside a symbol, and it's being moved, but it doesn't move with any kind of smoothness at all, right? So what I'm going to do is click and drag, highlight a span across all these keyframes. While it's highlighted, I'm going to go here as another drop down. I'm going to create classic tween. There's motion tween, classic tween. That, again, that could be a whole other Motion Monday to fill up the differences between what is, oh, come on. There we go. It turns like this sort of purple color. I have a nice little classic tween span. Motion tweens, if you remember one thing, are object-based, and classic tweens are frame-based, and I'll get into that hopefully soon. But now we have an animation of this happening, okay? But there's a couple things we want to do. It's interpolated equally throughout every frame, so it's very mechanical, very robotic. So what I want to do is it's starting like this. Let's have it ease out. So I'm going to go to Properties, click on the tween span. And as you can see here in the tweening dropdown, there's a little section for tweening. I can apply easing. So what I want to do is apply an ease out. And now, again, something gets a little confusing because if you come from any of the other applications, you would call this easing out or easing in. It's opposite in Animate. So I want to do an ease. Let's say we're starting from here, going out, ease out. I'm going to pick a cubic curve. And let's do an ease in here. You can even see if I click on each of these, you'll see that easing curve change. To apply it, double click the easing curve that you want. Is nesting, quick question from YouTube, is nesting used to handle lip sync? Yes, very much so. And if so, how would you handle individual audio clips that do not transfer over the parent timeline? Great question. And I deal with this all the time. Thank you, Cody, for relaying that question to me. What I end up doing is I try to ensure that the soundtrack starts on frame 1 and goes throughout the timeline. And then any nested timelines, I copy and paste that same frame that contains the audio into each nested clip that starts on frame 1. So in order to keep everything in sync, I also break up a lot of shots into sometimes 5-second shots or 10-second shots, export them as video, bring them all into Premiere Pro, edit them together. It makes more sense than having an entire 2-minute or longer timeline inside of Animate. I could maybe even show you if there's any amount of time left over, but I'm running late. So what I want to show you is this, but obviously it's not, the illusion is not there. It's not coming up out of the ground, right? What I want to do is mask it. I want to mask it so it only appears here. So I'm actually going to grab this symbol here on frame 15, copy it. Let's lock this layer, going to create a new layer, and I'm going to paste in place, Command Shift V. And while I'm here, and I'm going to hide the bottom layer, so all we see is this now. I'm going to break it apart, Command B, until it's just art again. And while it's selected, I'm going to pick a different color, some high contrast green screen type of color. And I'm going to right click over that layer, and I'm going to pick Mask. And you'll notice that it links automatically to the layer underneath it. Now, if I turn it on, you'll see what happens. It only shows me that area, right? So think of the mask as the window. And since it's exactly the same shape as the pole, I've created this. So now this is a nested animation. Let's go back out to the main timeline, the root of our document. We still have just one frame, one layer. This is the symbol that we were working in. And you can see I can even play the animation in here. It's this symbol here. What I want to do, since I want it to play on the main timeline, because if I were to export this to video right now, it would just be one frame. It would be basically a still video. I'm going to extend this out. If we extend it out, I'm going to hit F5 or actually use this drop down, extend out. And now we see the nested animation play. What's cool about this is I can click on it, go to Properties panel. It's set in looping. There's a whole looping section. I can say, you know what, just stay on frame 1. It'll do that. It's not going to move. If I click it and say, oh, I want you to stay on this frame, I'm using this little hot text slider that's looking at all the individual frames. There's even a frame picker. Where are you, frame picker? You're in here, and it'll show me all of the individual frames in here. Okay. Anyway, so what I want to do is extend this out because I want to make my animation last a lot longer. So I'm clicking and dragging, hitting F5. Let's go back to here. Let's go to looping. Let's just tell it to loop. Okay, so while we're at it now, let's move this over. What's great about nesting animations is that you can move it, scale it, and all those frames and all those tweens inside move with it. I can even rotate it, and you'll see what happens, right? It's all it is. It's great for editing, copying, pasting into other documents, things like that. Let's copy, paste in place, Command C, Command Shift V. And I'm going to use, holding down Shift and the right arrow key, I'm going to bring this over a bit. And then I'm going to select both of them, Command Shift, Command C, Command Shift V, same thing, paste in place, holding down Shift, using the right arrow keys. Let's do it one more time. Grab all 4 this time, paste in place. Now, this is sort of going back to the question about lip syncing. So now I have multiple instances of the symbol. They're all doing the same thing. But what if, let's have them all start on frame 1. All right. Whoops. Go to frame 1. Thank you. Let's click on the first one, frame 1. But what if we clicked on the second one and told it to start on frame 2? And then click on the third one, tell it to start on frame 3. Click on the fourth one, tell it to start on frame 5. You see where I'm going with this. 6, 7, and let's just do one more, 8. Now, if I play it, all of a sudden we have a really cool animation. But wait, there's more. I don't want to stop there, right? You look at this and you say, oh, that must have taken forever. Obviously not. It took, what, 10 minutes? Oh, we're already almost at the 20-minute mark. I want to get to something else. But what I'm going to first do is hit F8, convert even this to a symbol, go to 1 second mark. Now I have all this nested, and if I do this, and this, and this, I'm holding down Shift and Option, I'm duplicating this. Now I've got this whole thing going. And if we want, we can stagger it even more, and we can actually click on an instance of a symbol. We can go to Color Effects, go to Advanced. Maybe let's bring up the red, go to the second one, Color, Advanced, bring up the blue, or green, sorry. advanced, and blue. And now we've got this animation taking place. So we did that in very short time, right? So that's the power of nesting animations. Now let's apply that to, let's see, let's do like, all right, so here's a quick little shot from an animated short that I created recently. Here's one of the characters. And here, believe it or not, I'm actually using a lot of the same principles I just showed you regarding the pole animation that I just created, okay? If I go here, here's her head. And you're thinking maybe, oh, there's only one layer, there's only one keyframe. How is all that possible? Again, we're on the same, I'm sorry, the root timeline, right? Librarian head. It's a symbol. I can take it, I can scale it, I can rotate it, I can do whatever I want. All the animations go with it. All those different properties are being applied to the entire animation. Double click the symbol. Now I'm inside the librarian head. If you want to see all the layers, there they are. Those are all the layers that make up her head. Let me scale it down just a little bit and actually play this, and you'll see all the tweens and all the keyframes. All right, what I want to try to do before we run out of time, because there's never enough time. What if we wanted to make her head, right now she goes from looking at us to looking down, and then a little bit to the side, her right, our left. Let's make her turn and face the other way. So if I go and create another bunch of keyframes, let's actually go down a little further and hit F6, creating more keyframes. All right, I'm in this frame. Let's get this out of the way. What I want to do is start thinking about moving things like almost in a parallax kind of way, right? So what I have different parts of her face, different regions of her face already drawn out, but as different symbols. Property panel, you have all these different symbols, right? I got about 3 minutes. Probably not enough time to actually pull this off, but it'll give you a sense of how I create this sort of parallax 2.5D effect. It's still 2D, but it's not 3D either. I'm holding down Option, Free Transform. I'm moving things in opposite directions, which seems counterintuitive, like this earring. And this side of her hair will move this way. All these little clumps of hair could have been one symbol, but I knew the technique I wanted to try to achieve. And maybe we'll actually move, use the Free Transform tool, hold down Option, slide these out. And what I want to do actually is apply a tween so I can get kind of instant feedback on what's going on, easing in and out at the same time, and start to like, all right, we're getting somewhere. Even the lines of her face are individual symbols. So I can actually go in here and start moving stuff around, okay? We've got a couple more minutes. So the nose, even the nostrils, I'm going to hold down Shift, grab as many aspects of the nose as possible. There's even a shadow. And with them all selected, Free Transform tool, the Q is the shortcut key. I'm going to rotate this, maybe even skew it a little bit, adjust these lines a little bit more. Maybe even this nostril gets hidden a little bit, and this one comes out a little bit more. Let's see how that looks. All right, we're getting somewhere, right? Maybe this shadow, again, a different symbol. When I'm designing characters, I'm always thinking about motion. Yeah, it's not bad. We're getting there. You can see I'm just spending, literally seconds. You spend a little bit more, maybe, 5 or 10 minutes. And this is how I can make it move. But here's it here. Her eyes actually blink. On this keyframe, select the symbol. It's told to play once. Whenever I want her to blink, that's what I do. Now, if I stay tuned for Brittany and Fabiola. They're going to be talking about boosting your social media brand using Adobe Express. It's going to be fun. I'm getting more of a 2.5D effect, right? And so that's how I achieved results like this. And maybe there's a Motion Monday where I even show you how I created this frame by frame animation, because I like to mix it up a little bit. Frame by frame animation along with tweening, things like that. I actually literally took my phone camera and recorded video of myself actually doing that motion, brought it into Animate, used it as a reference track, and hand drew every other frame and created that. And now I have it inside a graphic symbol. That means I can just loop it as long as I want and stop it at any time as well. Cool. So I'm just checking to see what else is going on in the chat. Guys, thank you for hanging out. I guess I am coming up on time. And yeah, Michelle, I would love to see how you made that frame by frame. Maybe that's if I get invited back, that could be a whole Motion Monday segment of how I did that. It was actually kind of fun. I like challenging myself. So again, thank you guys. Brittany, Fabiola are up next. Thank you for coming, and I had fun. This is fun for me. I'm a lucky guy to be able to spend my days animating stuff. So until next time, I think we're good.